And so sometimes I'll be what's a nice word for dick?
I'll be
a Richard.
You could be a Richard.
Yeah, I'll be a Richard. And I'll just stand there and stare at him.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's uncomfortable.
No, and I don't like
I'm cringing already.
Yeah, and I'm like, I am not going to say a word until you lift your head and look me in the eye. I'm not expecting a smile at this point, but you have to start the conversation.
Welcome to the Small Business Safari, where I help guide you to avoid those traps, pitfalls, and dangers that lurk when navigating the wild world of small business ownership. I'll share those gold nuggets of information and invite guests to help accelerate your ascent to that mountaintop of success. It's a jungle out there, and I want to help you traverse through the levels of owning your own business that can get you bogged down and distract you from hitting your own personal and professional goals. So strap in, adventure team, and let's take a ride through the safari and get you to the mountaintop. Alan, cheers.
Cheers.
Customer service, one of our favorite topics. But before we do that, we have been getting a lot of good feedback and a lot of good traction as we started our podcast. And one of the things you brought up is you'd like to start answering some of those questions that we've been getting. And I said, hell no, not ready yet. However, if you want to.
Well, you do have a track record of making really bad first decisions.
I am a bad first decision track maker.
Yeah,
that's true.
It only takes you a couple of years to come around to a good idea.
So I'm on my way. So I like the idea. If anybody wants to give us some questions or bring in some feedback, you can email me, chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com.
Do you really want feedback, or do you just want questions?
I'm going to take just questions. I'll take feedback. That's chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. Go ahead and email me your questions or feedback. We'll address them on the upcoming podcasts. We're thinking about having just a Q&A session or a feedback session.
Mailbag, like the sports writers do.
Mailbag, like the sports writers. And you can email him at chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. And maybe by then we'll even come up with a really catchy name for what we want to call that segment. But go ahead and email us at chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com.
I'm not sure you said that 3 times.
chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. That's like 1-800-100.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that the worst jingle?
It is, and you know it, though.
But you know it.
But I have to turn that off because my son just goes insane. And I think
I'm right with your son. I go in
some crimes.
I turn it off every time I hear it. Yeah, that is torture stuff. That makes waterboarding look like something that should be just done for normal.
You think we could get the secrets out of the terrace if we just played them in the Cars for Kids?
You'd get every secret out of me if you maybe have to sit there and listen to that for an hour. God. And here we go. Man, we were starting to hit our stride with this stuff. And what we really wanted to talk about was customer service. I know you're a customer service freak.
No, I'm a customer service freak. There's a big difference.
And that's emphasis on freak?
Freak.
That's like, how do you pronounce Foo Fighters? It's freak. All right. You jump into it, man. I want to hear where you want to go.
Yeah, so I'll just ask you a simple question. Do you have customer service pet peeves?
I do have customer service pet peeves, especially when it comes to restaurants.
Yes, exactly. Most of my customer service stories tend to revolve around restaurants.
Yep, and it's when you sit down and nobody comes and gets your drink order right away, because I got to have a drink as soon as I sit down in a restaurant.
Why don't you go to the bar first?
Because remember, I have bad first decision making skills. And I have not learned after being in, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of restaurants, I think, between all the travel. But when you sit down and somebody doesn't come up to you right away, and you're kind of looking around, I'm not the guy ever to walk out. I don't think I've ever walked out of a restaurant saying, screw this, I'm out, unless somebody else in my party said we're leaving. It was never me who instigated because I feel bad about that. But that's one. So that's my number one, probably, pet peeve.
So my restaurant pet peeve is the over-processed customer service. And it sounds something like this. So you sit down and, you have this great greeting at the front, and then Susie comes over. She's like, hi, I'm Susie. I'm going to be your server today. I'm going to take great care of you, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a scripted thing, right? But you're like, oh, okay, Susie's awesome. She's going to take great care of us. So then you place your order, and then they put the plate down in front of you, and then Susie comes over and she goes, how is everything? And I'm like, hey, Susie, if you had eyes in your head connected to your brain, you could see I've not taken a bite yet. But I will tell you the arrangement is wonderful. I love the way the beans are nestled next to the protein and it seems like it's warm, so good. It drives me nuts. It's the over processed service, and that's the best example of it.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't fault them for it because that's how they were trained or that's what they were told to do to get the big tip. But it just doesn't make it happen, does it?
No, and that kind of gets to the essence of my whole thing on customer service. It has to be genuine. And I totally understand why businesses, and the bigger that they get, the more process you need to put in place because, by the time the Trusted Toolbox is international, you may crack the whip, but you have no idea if it snaps on the other end. So you have to have all these processes in place to make sure that the customer gets the exact same experience between all locations. But to me, it goes all the way back to people, and you have to want to genuinely deliver great customer service. It has to be part of your DNA. And another pet peeve of mine is going into a business and whoever is in charge of that business has not thought twice about who's making that first impression with me, whether it's on the phone or, my favorite is I've been on the road and I stop into a fast food place and the person behind the counter can't even look me in the eye and greet me sometimes. And so sometimes I'll be what's a nice word for dick? I'll be a Richard.
You could be a Richard.
Yeah, I'll be a Richard. And I'll just stand there and stare at him.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's uncomfortable.
No, and I don't like
I'm cringing already.
Yeah, and I'm like, I am not going to say a word until you lift your head and look me in the eye. I'm not expecting a smile at this point, but you have to start the conversation.
So I got to listen to a seminar here locally. A Chick-fil-A vice president came in. He started his speech talking about customer service. And he said there was one small change they had to make at Chick-fil-A years ago. They told everybody, you have to say, when somebody opens the door, welcome to Chick-fil-A. And they found that the customer experience wasn't there. It was lacking something. And what was it lacking? What you just said.
Eye contact.
Yeah. So then they had to train everybody to make eye contact and say, welcome to Chick-fil-A.
So now you have these people giving these big eyes.
So after I went to that, you walk in there, and that's right, you got somebody's eyeballs on you, and they're saying, welcome to Chick-fil-A. But what do? You go in there, you order a little extra, and you're in Chick-fil-A, and you passed over McDonald's, Arby's, Burger King, every other fast food restaurant all around there, because you wanted to go in there. Here in the Southeast, Chick-fil-A's service is king. But they hit on the eye contact. So it's so funny you brought that up. And that's not even scripted. That guy talked about that. I said that one little change made their customer service experience go up and their ratings go up.
It is amazing. And I've been involved at very high level, very big corporate conversations about customer service. And you can crunch all the data. And when it comes right down to it, it is what does that customer think about the quality of your employee? And if they think the employee is excellent or outstanding or awesome or whatever term, they'll actually put up with the service or product being good enough. But if the service provided and the product is great, but the employee delivering it is not, you'll never see them again.
I put this in my book and said that in-home services, which we're talking about restaurants, and we're going to come back to that in a minute, I think advantage restaurants when it comes to providing a great customer experience, not advantage home service providers, because I'm going into your house, your number one asset, your castle, your domain. You are the king or the queen of that castle, and I'm going to see you. And I put that in the book and said the quality is actually down further than the customer experience because they want to feel great about the customer experience. And I had this lady, actually, one of the emails that came through. I disagree with your comment about quality because if quality is not good, then I'm not going to like it. I said, you didn't hear what I said. What I said is you expected the hot water heater to come back on and have hot water. You expected the air conditioner to work and be cooled back down. You expected the door to be installed correctly, and it looked good. And you have an expectation of quality. But if my guy came in there and was 100% a dud, or showed up late, or smelled, or reeked, or was somebody that you didn't feel comfortable with, you're not going to give me a 5-star rating. You're going to give me a, 3-star rating, and give you the old, one of my favorite lines, he was a nice guy, but. He was a nice guy, but. No, he was a nice guy, but.
Sounds like all my college girlfriends.
You were a nice guy, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be a nice guy. That's what you learn. But no, so back to your point about it's the quality of the employee and the training they were given and the incentives that you provided around there, I think, is another part that's often missed when it comes to customer service. They just don't want to do it because they're trying to do it for the team. Tell me what I get for doing a great customer service. In home services, we call that a tip, a bonus, making your nut that month, and you get to get a bonus from your company. So if you tie your incentives back to it, which is, again, another big piece of doing that, I think that's huge, because what's the incentive for that host at the front to make eye contact with you? He gets, or she gets, what, 2% of what the take is on the tip, if she's lucky. Sometimes they just get paid hourly. I do know one restaurant pays their host and hostesses the least. And think about that.
How'd that go?
They're still doing all right, but it is because the food and the service when you get in there is so good. But I do know that the host and hostess, they get the kid from school, give them a couple bucks an hour, less than everybody else basically, and you'll see them and they'll be on their phone. And if I had you, Richard, with me, I guess you would be staring at them going, "You're going to make some eye contact?"
Yeah.
Because I'm coming to eat.
I know. And I'm not even from the Northeast like you. It's just, it comes out. I get so upset when I'm thinking, somebody paid $1 gazillion for this franchise. I know what a franchise costs in fast food. And I don't know if they're there anymore, but they've hired management to be there. And at some point, somebody made the decision to put this putz behind the counter to be my first point of contact. And I will never come back again. And as a matter of fact, I tend to be a little bit of a business terrorist because I'm also a business champion. If I love a place, I tell everybody. I'm opposite of those stats that you hear.
You're the exact opposite of those stats that you hear, because those stats are real.
Yeah.
And those stats are, for everybody who's listening, do a good job for one person, and he tells one person. Do a bad job for one person, and he tells 10 people.
Yeah, and the thing is there are a lot of business owners that don't realize how many people walk out of there thinking they did a bad job, because they may ask, "How was everything?" and they hear "fine," and in their mind they're like, "That's good." Fine probably means you do not have a happy customer, and they will be a business terrorist and then sneak around your back and tell 10 or more people about you, and you're wondering, why am I not getting repeat and referral business? And you think you're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's a big one, especially because in the restaurant business, I had somebody telling me this. They were trying to sell me, of course, advertising. But a good idea, and the thing they talked about, is that if you go to a restaurant once, you have a customer once. If they come back twice, you have a chance to get them back for the third time. But once you get them back a third time, you'll have a customer for a very long time unless you really screw it up. So 3 times the charm. Their idea was to have the owner or somebody come up at the end and say, "Next time you come in, desserts on me. Next time you come in, entrees on me." And giving away part of their meal, but getting the people back. Because once I get you back for the third time, their premise is you keep going. I was like, okay, I'm buying, I'm listening. So for me, we don't necessarily offer the discounts in home services, but we ask for that review at the end. And if the good customer service is good, and then we follow up with how did our service go, and ask those questions. Because today we have 40% of our business is repeat customers.
Yeah, no, you're doing an amazing job in that area, and as you know, not every job goes well.
Not every meal goes well. Not every job goes well.
No, and I think, it's easy to provide good customer service when you did a good job that time and the customer's nice. Where the companies separate themselves is, what if something goes wrong? So I'll give you an example. Back to restaurants again. I'm like you, I won't walk out of one. So I go to this restaurant and they seat us in a table, and now I'm a little paranoid about being kind of on the periphery of tables because you may get missed, and we got missed. And we got our drinks, but then nobody took our order, and it took forever. And when I mean forever, I'm talking like 30, 45 minutes before we saw somebody again.
Wow.
And finally, the server came out and apologized, made some excuse, and then ultimately the manager came out, which I was really impressed with. The server obviously felt bad and said something to the management. They came out and he really apologized, and he comped us the meal. Now, I think most people listening go, "That's great. That's a great job providing great customer service." Now, what really happened was I never went back, because when I have a bad experience, that place ceases to exist in my mind. It's like I'm driving down the street and there's just these little black holes of places that didn't provide good service to me, and I don't even think of them ever again. What he could have done was come out, apologize, and give me his card and say, your next meal's on me. And he could have comped this one, but I want you to come back and give us another try so I can really show you what the service is all about. Your next meal's on me. I would have done that. And he might have had that customer for life because I, would probably go back the third time. So I always had a little rule of thumb. If, somebody's complaining about money, you have to resolve it with money. But if somebody's complaining about service, you have to resolve it in a way that gets them back in your door so you can prove yourself again.
I love that you hit on that. When I first started the business, and I talk about the start from zero and having no money, when I got a chance to meet a carpet cleaner here locally who was 6 years ahead of me in business. And he said, do you have a customer refund pool? I'm like, that's called no. I'm not going to give anybody their money back. Are you crazy? I don't have any
straight out of my 401k.
I got no money. Yeah. I mean, I just, everything I funded the business with came in. Now, in 13 years, the answer is yes, I do. You hit on it where you talk about you got to take the money and give back the money. But if they talk about service or quality or I just didn't feel good, it's not the money they want to hear about. Sometimes they just want to tell you how you could run your business better, but they also want you to come back and make it right. If you leave me with a quality product, it's okay, keep your money. That's not why I was asking about. But sometimes just giving the money back makes you look like a king because they never expect that. Again, in home services, we've been talking a lot about restaurants right off the bat, but we take a lot of those restaurant examples and apply them to the home services space, and it's amazing how close it is. Mm-hmm. But advantage restaurant, advantage hotel, advantage gas station. Why? Because they're all coming to this place with an expectation. I'm coming to this gas station to get gas. I'm going to this hotel to put my head on a pillow and have a night and sleep. I'm going to this restaurant to eat this kind of food. I don't go to an Italian restaurant and lay everybody out because I couldn't get Mediterranean food or I couldn't get Indian food or I couldn't get Chinese food. Or I don't go, I can't believe these guys couldn't even get me a piece of seafood at this Italian burger restaurant or whatever. I'm like, what the hell? You can't do that. So they know what to expect.
Right.
When we come into their house, the customer's anxiety and the expectation level is so high and sometimes so undefined, we have no idea what to hit.
Is it because you're a little scary?
I don't think we're scary. I mean, I think I come across like a nice guy, as I've learned quite a bit. Sometimes my niceness doesn't come across exactly like I thought. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking. I'm like, what? I was trying to be nice to you. What the hell? Come on, lady. Open the door. I'm kidding. But that's where in home services, I think the expectations need to be set. And if you can't set those expectations in the beginning as a company about what you're about to get for customer service, that's going to be a huge whiff. And the restaurants and the hotels and the gas stations all get that expectation already laid out. People don't go into Chick-fil-A saying, okay, I'm willing to wait 45 minutes for my meal, and I expect to get a steak. They expect to get a chicken sandwich and get it in under 5.5 minutes. But other way around, you don't expect to go to a Capital Grill and expect to get a chicken sandwich in 5.5 minutes. You're expected to sit down and you'll wait the appropriate amount of time that you think in your clock is okay before somebody comes and asks you for a drink. If I ever come in, just know that that's 30 seconds. But for most people, most general people, it's probably 5 minutes. Everybody sits down. You're doing a little chit-chat among the table, and then somebody comes up to you and introduces himself. You're willing to wait. So you have that expectation when you go to this place. But when you don't have those expectations, or your expectation is this guy's going to come in, he's not going to call me before he gets there, he's going to show up, he's going to mess up my house, he's going to try to take half my money and do half the work, he's going to try to take all the money and do none of the work, he's going to try to completely defraud me in my castle. And that's where I got on my soapbox and I just went off and you're sitting there looking at me going, are you going to stop anytime soon? No, because I'm so passionate.
When does this man breathe? Woo! Do you have gills?
That one was big because that's a big deal for me.
It's a passionate thing, and you're saying they have no expectations, but it sounds to me like they do have expectations and they're not good. They're hoping that they're good. Can I give one more restaurant example? And I may have actually talked about this on a previous podcast, but
you did promise that one time we get to do all NASCAR. I wasn't ready for that today, but I am ready for another restaurant because I'm passionate about eating.
I'm into Formula One now, so we may have to do a Formula One.
Okay, that one's going to be a little harder for me. I do watch it, but all right, give me your restaurant analogy because I want to.
Well, it goes back to the importance of people, and if people don't really understand, because every company has this customer service, customers are most important asset, blah 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 blah. And they talk a big game, but they don't deliver. And one time when I was a franchise consultant, and for those listening, if I've told this story before, I'm sorry, but it's worth telling again. I was out in Texas and I was visiting a franchise that was, from my opinion, which was obvious the second I walked in the door. It's a customer service issue. It's not a marketing issue. The reason why they're not successful is 100% customer service. And we had gone out for a late lunch, and of course, we're in Texas, so I'm getting brisket. And we're sitting in the parking lot after the meal, and it's probably 2:30 in the afternoon. And directly across the street was a Burger King, a McDonald's, and a Chick-fil-A. And you know where the story's going.
Yep.
In the Burger King drive-thru, there was one car. In the McDonald's drive-thru, there were 3 cars. And for anybody that knows Chick-fil-A, there were 2 lines wrapped around the building at 2:30 in the afternoon.
30 cars deep.
And I'm probably going to get hate mail from anybody who's born and raised in the South, but it's just a freaking chicken sandwich. I mean, it's good. It's tasty. We go there all the time. It's still fast food. And they're hiring from the exact same pool. These 3 buildings right next door to each other are hiring from the exact same pool, and they're offering essentially the same thing. What's the difference? It's the people. You know that they're going to say "my pleasure" ridiculously often every time you say thank you. They're going to look you in the eye. It's going to feel like you step back in time to the good old days when people were actually nice to you. And if you had an issue, they would absolutely take care of it, and you're not going to have an issue. And I still cringe when my family wants to drive through and get in that stupid line that wraps around the building, but it whizzes through. It's shocking how fast. They're just so good at what they do, but they've got the same talent pool. They're probably paying the same amount of money. They're hiring better, they're training better, they have better expectations, and they're just not going to put up with the person who won't even greet me. And Truett Cathy, actually, I've read a couple of his books. One of the things that he talks about, and I love this, is he rewards employees for doing something right. He makes a big deal. They don't manage by looking for people doing things wrong and punishing them, which is how most people get, especially when they're down to their last dollar as a business owner and they freak out about a mistake. What they do is they look for people doing things right, and they celebrate it publicly, which does it a couple of things. It makes that person feel really good. It makes them want to get caught doing something right again, and it makes other people also want to get caught doing something right. It's a genius philosophy. It's very hard to execute, actually.
That's a hard one to execute on, because the catching somebody doing something right is, not that it doesn't happen a lot, but then you have to go over the top and reward. We have a philosophy here at the Trusted Toolbox, is that we applaud everybody for something they did well publicly and always chastise privately, like a reinforcement of a process or something.
Yeah.
The other thing we've done here is we actually have come up with our impersonal guy called Tommy Toolbox. So Tommy's the one who always screws everything up. Tommy's the one who puts his hand in his pocket. Tommy's the guy who doesn't look anybody in the eyes. Tommy's the guy who's got bad genes, because it's never my guys. It's always Tommy. So we use Tommy.
You have a fake employee.
We have a fake employee, Tommy Toolbox. He's been up here. And in fact, we have tenure on every one of our employees, and Tommy's been here too long. So we use that, but you just hit on the rewarding part. That's a big part, because you're reinforcing that behavior. And they're hiring from the same exact pool. I put that line in my book as well about Chick-fil-A. I will pass through it.
You wrote a book?
I wrote a book, and this is where we're going to break for one of our sponsors. Let's go ahead and thank one of our sponsors. Are you in the home service business and train your employees to represent your company in the right way when they're taking care of customers? Are they providing a 110% customer experience? If you aren't getting those rave reviews that you expect, or those repeat customers that you crave, then you need to get the HomeServiceInstitute.com training programs. These training programs talk the language of your technician and help them figure out how to align your goals with their wants. Go ahead and check out the HomeServiceInstitute.com and all of their training modules, and they will turn your employees into 110% customer experience providers. That's the HomeServiceInstitute.com. And now let's get back to listening to what the guys have to say. So now we're back, and we're talking about that. In the book, I talked about the Chick-fil-A thing, because that makes a lot of sense to many of us, especially here in the Southeast, about how they do it. But you feel good when you go there. When you go there, you feel like, you know what? Everybody in there is pulling for me, and they're going to make me the best chicken sandwich I've ever had, even though it's the same every time you go.
A better example, going back to service trumping the quality of the product, is Waffle House. Everybody in the South loves Waffle House. And yet, when you go in, 75% of the time the order that you get probably isn't exactly what you ordered. But no matter what time of the day or night, because they're open 24 hours, you walk in, you've got somebody who hollers out hello. Everybody in there says hello. Some of them don't even have teeth. And I would always tell my staffs, I'm like, if that person at Waffle House at 3 a.m. can greet a drunken customer coming in with a smile and a hello, we certainly have the ability to turn on the charm for our people. And so to me, that's just a great reinforcement of that. It's communication. It's the genuine nature of your people. And it's just so obvious as a customer, when you're getting a processed customer service spiel. And it's fine to have a process, but it has to come from the heart. And you had asked me offline, what was something that I learned in the corporate world that I brought to my own business? And this wasn't a specific thing I was taught. It was just something I learned. And that is that sales and service are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, the better your service, obviously, the more repeat and referral business you're going to get, the more sales you're going to get. But you actually will build the ability to charge more for your service because you're just better. And so you actually have earned the right to make more money because you're better.
I agree with that. When you're giving that service that you're allowed to do that. I want to talk about a little bit more about the consistency of delivery too. Because what if you go to Capital City Grill and you sat down and you had this steak and everything was good and the service was great, and the next time you go back, things are a little bit different. The steak doesn't taste the same. Maybe the service was a little off, meaning that they showed up at the right time, but they didn't come back and check on you, and they let you kind of hang at the end. And you're like, well, that just wasn't the same customer experience because the consistency wasn't there. But had the first time been a 2-hour meal at the Capital City Grill, and the second time had been a 2-hour meal at the Capital City Grill. The first time was an hour. The second time was 2 hours. The second one, you're like, wow, that took a lot longer than I thought. What happened? But had they done 2 hours both times, you would have been thrilled. So that consistency, or that sales and service consistency part, makes a big difference, I think, over time. Because if you go to Chick-fil-A and have to wait 20 minutes for a sandwich, you're mad.
When I was in high school, I had a job working at Burger King, and the expectation then, this was like in 1850, was that every car had 30 seconds in the drive-thru. And you would think, okay, the difference between 30 and 40 seconds isn't that big a deal, but it was measured, it was clocked. And I will tell you, knowing that in the back of my head, I have a little timer just mentally, because as soon as it gets past 30 seconds and the car in front of me doesn't move, something's wrong. And 45 seconds seems like a complete disaster.
Isn't it amazing how 10 seconds changes your entire perspective on how this is about to go down?
Right.
And so in the home services business, if you say, I'm going to be there between 8:30 and 9 in the morning, when somebody doesn't call our customers 30 minutes ahead, the other guy did, and they don't, that second guy is about to get, and already starting off, at a deficit. He's already starting out in a hole, as opposed to starting out at the same equal footing, calling your customer 30 minutes ahead of the intended appointment time. Because if you call them and let them know, I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock, got to stop, maybe pick up some material, or got to get some gas, and then I'll be there at 9. The customer gets to set their expectation and bring their anxiety level down. Now they know what to expect at 9. And what I teach my guys all the time about consistency of delivery is you don't have to be there at 8:30, you have to call at 8. And if you don't call at 8, the guy before you did, and the guy after you is going to. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you're not going to get the tip. You're not going to get the nice, easy transaction. You're not going to get the happy customer. You're not going to get that 5-star review. So now they know, under penalty of this absolute whipping and me calling them Tommy Toolbox, they got to call 30 minutes ahead. Because what we found in the study was that call ahead, 30 minutes, actually trumps the quality of the work at the end.
Yep.
And then you didn't call, and you showed up at 9. One of my best techs on his way out of the company, and that's truly said like that. He was great, and he was on his way out of the company. Okay. He started showing up at 10 and then 10:30. and he could get everything done in twice the time of anybody else at our company with high quality. He was just a high performing, very good technician. Yet his ratings started to go down, down, down. What happened? He still was finishing the job and making more money per hour than anybody else because we do work by the job. But here's the feedback I was getting from customers. Well, Chris, he was a nice guy, but he didn't show up till 10. And then he took off to Home Depot and he was getting materials and he was been gone for, 2 hours. And then he left at 3. And now I got to pay you guys all this money. I said, well, is there anything wrong with the quality? No, it's great. Well, did he communicate with you what he was doing? Well, while he was here, yeah, he did great work, but he wasn't here very long. I had another guy at the same time who's still with me in my company, not as good, not as highly functioning as this other guy.
You want to mention him by name?
I can't, because if he listens to this, he's going to know. Actually, he completely admits this. We call him Goody. Goody used to show up at 8 instead of 8:30. He'd call at 7:30. Hey, do you mind if I come early? He would go there early. He would smile. He would greet them. He'd meet them by the eye. He would show them what he was about to do. He admittedly is not as good as a handyman doing the quality work that we do, but his customer service skills overdid everything. He was getting the tip. He was getting bonuses every month. He was getting those 5-star reviews every single time. And he did it because he started early and finished early. But when he was there, he was on their time, and he was showing them that he was hustling. And that is a part of the consistency, because he did a great job, but he wasn't near as consistent as the other guy. And when the other guy started to not be consistent, showing up later, he started to get negative reviews. Even though, and I kept telling him, I'm like, I bought him an extra alarm clock, this guy. I bought him an extra alarm clock. I said, put that in your house. Because I promise you, if you show up between 8:30 and 9 and you finish your job at 2, people are going to have no problem paying you for the quality work you do. Yeah. But when you don't call them and you show up late and you take off and you tell them you're not feeling good, and then you go back and you finish it off at 5 o'clock at night and they're all having dinner, they're not really happy with you anymore. The consistency is just getting blown out of the water.
It all goes back to communication. It all goes back to the quality of the person. And what you're basically saying about Goody is maybe he isn't that consistent about what he does. I mean, he gets the job done. What he is consistent about is this proactive communication. And when I had my furniture store, it was all custom order. And, you could order a sofa, and even if all the materials were ready to go, you're not going to see it for, 8 to 10 weeks. But what we would tell people is 12 to 14 weeks. So there's the whole under promise, over deliver kind of aspect. It's like with Dell computers. Do you remember?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would order a computer and they would say it's going to take 6 weeks, and then it showed up in 3 days, and you're just doing cartwheels and telling all your friends. It was a really cool thing. Well, I wasn't quite that obnoxious, but one of the things I quickly figured out was, okay, let's say we say 12 to 14 weeks. We think we have 14. The customer has 12 in their head. But what they're hoping is it's 11 or 10 before their sofa shows up. That's a big gap. Then every day after, let's say they gave you mentally 11 weeks or even 12 weeks, every day after that, and we think we're good because we've got 14 weeks, they're just getting more stressed and more stressed. And what I ended up telling my team was, look, every Friday, you're going to call every single customer who has something on order, whether we have anything to tell them or not. Did I just blow your head?
Boom! Go, Alan, go!
Yeah.
Every Friday, whether we have an update or not, you call them.
You call them, and you're like, just want to let you know, everything seems to be good. Haven't forgotten about you. Looking forward to doing this. We're in touch with you. And what ended up happening was that person, because the worst thing in the world was the customer calling us 6 weeks in going, hey, have you heard anything? Because they're excited and they're thinking about it. And we're just letting them know ahead of time, we haven't forgotten about you. You're on our radar. You're an important customer. I'll let you know if anything changes. Then when the factory, remember, we're building a sofa here, they don't even pull the order to start working on it for 10 weeks. Well, at that point, then they go back and see, do we actually have the stuff to build it? Oh, we don't? It's in China? At that point, if we waited 10 weeks to call somebody to say, hey, things are back ordered, then we look like a complete idiot. And one of the things I've learned is that people can handle ignorance, and that's an interesting word to use. They can't handle incompetence. And you look incompetent when you wait 10 weeks in this scenario before you call them to let them know bad news. But if you were talking to them every week and then at 10 weeks, something came up, well, they know you were on it. It's just the factory, something came up. And I've always been, we actually had a scenario the other day, going back to a restaurant, sorry. One of my big pet peeves is I know everybody's short-staffed.
Especially right now in COVID.
In COVID.
COVID times, people coming out of it. Where we are right now, everybody's short-staffed. And you get those signs that say, hey, don't yell at them. They at least showed up.
Yeah, right. I love that.
Yeah.
And so we're very patient. But, even before COVID, you'd have a situation where things are backed up and the server comes out and they give you the stressed look because they think you're going to have compassion for them. Look, they're stressed. They're working so hard. And then they're complaining, somebody didn't show up and the chef's an idiot. That doesn't help me. But if they came up to me and just said, hey, it's going to be a little bit slower tonight, but I will take good care of you. I will be on top of it for you. I'll keep you posted. Your order is the third one, from now to be, for the chef. I'm fine. And it happened just the other day. We had a server who was just as charming as can be. She let us know up front things were going to be a little slow. And she kind of kept coming out, and I'm like, no worries. We are not in a rush. We're not in a rush, but she just was proactive. She got ahead of it. She kept me from the tension building to the detonation point because she was so upfront and so honest. And then at the end of the meal, she actually comped my beers because she was just so appreciative that we weren't giving her a hard time. It was a really cool experience.
People will accept ignorance, but not accept incompetence. And I think...
And the ignorance piece, I'm sorry to step over you. Yeah. It doesn't really totally dovetail into the little story I gave, but what I mean by that is if you have a new employee or you have somebody, let's say it's a new employee, inexperienced employee, but they're awesome and they just don't know, but the customer asks them a question, it's like, you know what, I'm new here, that's a great question, let me get an answer for you. They'll be patient as can be. If that employee is pretending that they know everything and they don't, then that rolls into the incompetence arena.
Gotcha. So you'd like to rescind the word ignorance and say that not all people are ignorant. So
no, I didn't say all people are ignorant.
Oh. So that's good. I'm glad to see that you have at least some small modicum of belief that there's a human spirit out there that can actually overcome ignorance. Thank you,
I am
Richard.
Awful. Yeah, thank you, Richard.
The ability to communicate and let people know what's going on keeps people from going to that deep, dark place in the soul of their heart.
You got to keep them out of there.
Because they are in the deep, dark abyss. In the absence of communication, people go to a deep, dark spot.
They go there really quickly. It's the default mode. It's like, I knew it. I knew it.
I knew they weren't going to do it. I knew they weren't going to put the door in. I knew they weren't going to be able to fix my drywall. I knew they weren't going to show up today. I knew they were going to make a mess. So I'm giving you all home services examples because, well, that's what I know best. But when you don't communicate with them, and especially today, we're having problems with supply chain and COVID, as long as you tell them there is nothing you or I can do about this. But right now, for example, Delta is not making any oil-rubbed bronze fixtures until fourth quarter of 2021. There's nothing we can do about that. If I could find one, I would. If you can find one, I'll let you. But we can't. So until we get that, we will not be able to put this rubbed oil bronze fixture in, probably until first quarter of 22. Okay, thank you for telling me. I understand now. Now I have an expectation. I'm willing to wait. We had a customer say that, and which is totally cool. And so the postscript to the story is they came back and said, I don't want Delta anymore and I don't like rubbed oil bronze. I just want to get this sucker put in. But I think when you communicate, that really helps people stay away from that. And that goes a long way towards great customer service. But how do you train skilled trades, handymen, electricians, plumbers, all these people, interior decorators, train them to go over the top and communicate? You don't. You have to come up with that checklist or those dreaded things called policies we talked about on another podcast. But you got to have that checklist and say, every Friday, you got to touch your customer. I don't care if their job is starting in a month. Just call them, text them, email them, whatever their mode of communication is, and let them know, haven't forgot about you, going to still do this.
Looking forward to it.
That's all I wanted to hear on a Friday.
Yep. Yeah, it could be just as simple as a text.
And that consistency of delivery has been big for us in our business as well. Because when we can't get to you right away, especially right now being short-staffed and way too much work to do, because in our world, the expectations are so all over the board. They are completely unrealistic. I have customers who don't really know what to expect. We haven't even touched the hotel world, but let's go to a restaurant and use a gas station. When you go to the gas station, you expect to get gas. Most of us expect to pay for the gas at the pump. How many times have you not had that pump reader work and you get back in your car and you drive away because I'm not going to go all the way in there and have to deal with that incompetent guy? Is incompetent fair? No, or ignorant? Which one did we not supposed to say? I forgot. Anyway, I'm not going to go in there.
With the word ignorant.
I'll go back. I'll shut the door. I'll drive to another gas station just so I don't have to go in there and give the guy my card. Because my level of expectation on the service is I go there, I put my card in, I press my gas that I want to get, I put my gas pump in there, and I go do my thing. And I make it all happen. Get my gas.
Now, I know you've done a great job with your checklist, and you've talked about the fact that, as a matter of fact, I read it in your book, that in the home services industry, you're dealing with lone wolves.
Yeah.
And they just want to do their job and get in and out. And I was thinking about that. It's like, if I ran your business, what if you had this person who was just amazing at his craft, her craft, but just couldn't get over that personal hump? And I'm thinking, well, I guess what I would do is surround them with the support team. The person who's answering the phone, who's setting up the appointment for the estimate, the estimator, those people are awesome. And then I'm assuming there's a project manager, and that person could be awesome. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking, I could see myself calling Mrs. Johnson and saying, I've got my best guy coming to your project. Here's the deal. He's so much better at plumbing than he is at being charming. So you and I can have a little laugh at this. And actually lean into it and have some fun with it. And then the guy shows up and he's, a putz, but he just does a great job with plumbing. But you've already kind of set this expectation. I mean, that's probably a crazy thing to think about. But
no, actually, I'm smiling. I got this. I have the Cheshire Cat where I smile going. That's what we do. We don't do it like you just said. But let's go back to where we started this podcast. I can't believe the very first touch point you gave me at this restaurant was this putz. Your very first touch point in your company could be your website. It's impersonal, but it's that first phone person. Mm-hmm. So my ladies on the phone, we talk about smiling when we get them on the phone.
You better be blowing sunshine.
We are sitting there. We're happy to help you, happy to solve your problem. Once the estimator goes out there and gives them an estimate and they accept the estimate, we turn them over to our scheduler. Our scheduler is the sergeant at arms. And she will say, between you and me, this is my best technician. He may seem a little rough around the edges. Bear with him, because he is going to give you the best answer we could possibly give you. I've heard her say that.
I love it.
And he is today still one of our best technicians. He does smile. He even knows he's not the best at it, because when he shows up, he's an artist.
Yeah.
He is. His mind is rolling right now about how to solve your problem. His mind is not rolling about asking you how your day's going. His mind is not rolling about it's his pleasure. His pleasure is to show you the canvas that he painted or the door he put in or the whatever he does, because he is just that good. But that's the running joke, is that she says that to these people. Because the people know it, they love him. And then ask for him again. Because he also engages in zero chit-chat, which in most people just, think, well, oh my gosh, does he even like me? He doesn't even talk to me. But wow, the work he did was amazing. And he gets tips. Last year alone, he got $1,200 in tips that he told me about.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is a guy who, if you met him, you'd be like, nice guy, pretty cool. Yeah, can have a beer with him. But when he's in work mode, it's work mode. Because I'm there to provide for my family. I'm there to do my thing. So we have to caveat give him that. Because within his great customer service, it is his quality of work that he does. So what we have to do is put a little bit of wrapper on him so we can keep that consistent delivery going. Because if I don't do it the same way every time, when we go to a customer's house, they start to wonder if this is the story I want to come back to. Which is why, again, as we wrap this up, that's why today we have 40% repeat business, is because we're so passionate about our customer service and putting those checklists and those processes in place to get there. So with that, this was Great Customer Experience, Chapter 1. But come back to the next podcast where we're going to hit in some great customer experiences that maybe didn't go so well. And he was a nice guy, Bud. And Chris will tell you all about the issues we have and how you can rebound from a good one. And we might even get to the caterpillar sandwich.
The caterpillar sandwich.
Stay tuned, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Small Business Safari. Remember, your positive attitude will help you achieve that higher altitude you're looking for in the wild world of small business ownership. And until next time, make it a great day.